Hello, this is episode one, Journey in Shenzhen, China as an English teacher. I've been in Shenzhen for approximately 4 months as an English teacher, and it's a job change. So I wasn't an English teacher before, and now it's a new profession, and it is at times challenging. However, I learn new skills. The age demographic that I normally teach between are young learners and teens. So they range anywhere from 3 years old all the way up to 18. In my classes specifically, they can be around 4 or 5 years old all the way till 13, 14 years old or so. Yesterday I had 3 young learners classes, and one of them was a cover class. So I covered another teacher's class. It wasn't as disruptive as I would have thought it would be, because sometimes when you cover another teacher's class, they aren't used to your routines. They might act out a little bit. However, this class was fairly well behaved for the most part, and we went through all the lesson names, and overall I think it went pretty well. I also had so each of these classes lasts for 60 minutes. So it's 3 hours of classes for young learners. So this ranges between, my 3 classes range between 4 years old and 6 years old. And then the next 2 classes were my own classes. So the next class, we discussed more about household items, such as where is the clock? The clock is next to the bed or something like that. Or so there's a lot of prepositions. We went over prepositions, and I feel like sometimes teaching prepositions to young learners is a little challenging. So since this is their second language, Chinese is their first language, Mandarin Chinese for most of them. And one of the rules is you can't use Chinese to teach them. So teaching prepositions is quite challenging. So what I normally do is I use a cup. So I use like a paper cup, and then I use a pencil. So I'll use prepositions. So I'll put the pencil on the cup, and I'll say on, and I'll put the pencil in front of the cup, and I'll say in front of. Put the pencil behind the cup, and then I'll say to the class behind, under, and I'll say under, next to, and then I'll put the pencil in the cup, and I'll say in. So I'll repeat that. I'll repeat that as a class multiple times, so they get it. Then I'll drill individually with each of the students to get the prepositions. What I found is behind and in front of gets confused quite often. I'm not sure why. Maybe in front of is like a lot of words, and behind, I'm not exactly sure, but I what I notice is like they get confused quite easily. And then if they don't use those words for a long period of time, they'll start to forget it. So we right now, we just, like, they're in China, they're finishing their summer, so they're about to go back to school. But during that summer period, they missed a lot of classes, and they went on vacation. So when they came back, they started forgetting some of the prepositions. So they started mixing up in front of, behind, next to. I think most of them can get it. But prepositions for young learners, what I've seen so far, for some of them, it can be challenging. For some of them, they get it. So I think it kind of depends. And then also the question and response. So one of the things that we teach like we say, what is it? And then they'll respond, it's whatever the thing is, right? So it's a pencil, or it's a pizza. So what is it? It's a pencil. So what I found is if they're like 5 or below, they tend to mimic your question rather than answering the question. But if they're like some of them like around 6, 5 or 6, they know how to respond to it. So what I mean, an example is if I say what is it, and I'm pointing to the pizza, I want them to answer it's a pizza, the flashcard pizza, right? And they will repeat when I say what is it, they'll say what is it instead of answering the question. So and you can't use Chinese so to kind of instruct them. So if it gets really difficult, you ideally you don't want to use Chinese because then they always talk to you in Chinese, so they don't get used to using English. You do have a TA who, if really necessary, you can ask them to translate. But I try to not do it unless it's like I'm disciplining them and they've done something wrong and I want them to understand what they've done wrong. I'll ask the TA to explain to them. If they do that again, then there's going to be like some form of punishment. So they don't kind of repeat the misbehavior in class. So this conversation with where you go back and forth with the question and answer, where you're trying to ask a question and then the class answers you, it takes a while for them to get it. And in this specific class where I was going over like a location where you ask where something is with a preposition being in, under, above, below, in between. We don't say in between, but we say next to. We don't teach in between, but we teach next to, in, on, in front of, behind, under. And what happened is it took a while for them to realize that I was asking them a question and I don't want them to repeat my question. I want them to answer the question rather than repeating the question. So I would ask, where is the lamp? And they'll just repeat, where is the lamp? And I'm like, the lamp is next to the bed. And then they'll say, the lamp is next to the bed. So they'll repeat like a parrot. And I'll try to say, no, don't say where is the lamp. So they and then like 1 or 2 will start to get it, and I'll say, yes, good job, and I'll point to the ones that answer the question rather than repeating my question, and then eventually the whole class kind of gets it. That's what you're trying to get them to do, is to answer the question. So around like maybe halfway through the class, they eventually got it, and then a lot of us started catching on with the prepositions of where is the clock, or where is the lamp, where is the TV? The TV is on the wardrobe. So kind of went through those prepositions with them. It was a little a little challenging trying to like lesson plan for this specific topic, since I haven't taught this specific topic very many times. And I found that because I was originally going to use the flashcards to move it, but then when I was teaching, I realized like when you have flashcards, you can't do like the lamp is inside the wardrobe. You can't put the flashcard inside the flashcard. So what we have is like the PowerPoint slides where it has physical pictures that shows the lamp that's inside the wardrobe. So if you have actual pictures depicting that and then asking the questions to the class, I think that is more helpful in teaching the prepositions if you're going to use like in, under, and things like that, because sometimes it's hard to elicit that if you just have flashcards. So an actual picture of where it's located will be very, very helpful. Then the last class, it was the class I just finished talking about, with where we talked about prepositions with household objects. I think there was, how many students was there? There was like 8 or 9 students or so. And then my last class, the third class, it was an older group, so I think they were like about 6 years old, but a lot of them were absent, so I only had 2 students, which when you have 2 students, they end up getting a lot of repetition, but then you also finish your material very quickly because there's less participation in the activities, if you had like 8 students, then it takes like 4 times as long to get through the activities because everyone gets one try on these different activities. So these, I just had to like go through them more like newer activities, add-on activities onto it. So for this specific lesson, we went over foods and drinks. So it was the first time they would be exposed to it. So food and drinks, things like pizza, salad, and I think they had trouble with salad. I'm not sure if maybe China doesn't eat a lot of salads, so the children weren't familiar with that picture, so they didn't associate it. But if they saw like a burger, they're like hamburger, hamburger, like they knew what a hamburger was because like they're probably exposed to it. So, but when they saw a salad, it was a little like the picture in the salad, they really didn't. I guess they don't eat salads as children. You don't eat salads, and maybe in China they don't eat as much salads. I'm not sure which one. And then one of the students, a girl, she she confused the words fries and noodles, which was really unusual. And the only thing that I can think of was that the fries look long and noodles look long as well. So she wasn't looking at the words. So like the flashcard has the words and then it has a picture. And I'm guessing that those two pictures look very similar. So when I showed her noodles, she might say fries, and when she sees fries, she might say noodles. So I think that I think there's like a cognitive development theory by Piaget, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm not sure. They are still in the pre-operational developmental stage. So at this point, they see things more holistically. So this is like different developmental stages that children go through. They see language more holistically and they don't analyze specifically. So they'll associate like images and things like that with language. So I think that she's focusing a lot on the picture, and then she sees long, like something long is like, okay, that's noodle. So, but then fries are also long. So she's associating those two things together. So, what I had planned to kind of fix that in the future, as an anticipated problem. So when I teach the similar lesson again on foods and drinks, that I kind of point to the words, like fries is like F, starts with an F, and then noodles is like begins with an N, and then there's the opposite side of the flashcard has the actual only the words without the picture. So I would actually drill them on just the words, so that they associate it properly. So those were the 3 classes that I had a couple days ago. And the last class, they will be going into a higher level class. So that would be the very last class that I would teach them, because they're entering into primary school. So overall, lesson planning for me, moving on to the next part, I'll talk more about like my experience so far with teaching. In the beginning, it was quite challenging to lesson plan, and it kind of gives me some empathy towards my teachers in the past that used to teach when I was in elementary, middle school, high school, college. Gives me a little bit more empathy towards them, because it does take to be a really good teacher, it does take a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of time and effort. So you have your lesson planning. So before, when I first started, like to prepare 1 hour of class, in the very, very beginning, like the first 1 or 2 weeks, I was taking like 4 or 5 hours to plan 1 hour of class. And I was like slow because I was looking over through the materials, trying to understand what material this is and how can I make these, how can I create some kind of games to make it fun for the children? And then what do I say? How do I present it to the children, downgrade my language? Because when you're speaking to children, young learners, that English is not their first language, you have to simplify it. You can't just narrate. So if you say, okay, first you gotta go and click this box, then you have to say it out loud. Then you have, if you start narrating towards young learners, they don't know what you're saying. So you gotta simplify it. So you basically say, number one, listen. So you tell them, and you gesture your hand, you cup your ears to gesture listen. So number one, listen. Number two, circle. So if you want to circle, like draw a circle, say circle. Number three, say. So that means you want them to say what the word is. So you have to really simplify, downgrade your language. So I would script this out in my lesson plan notes, like every detail in the very beginning. So it, like, to teach 1 hour of class, it took me like 5 hours or more to lesson plan for that 1 hour. And it was overwhelming at first because I took it really, really seriously, as I do most things in my life. So eventually things started flowing more smoothly, and eventually it became like 3 hours for 1 hour, and then it was 2 hours of lesson planning for 1 hour. And now, if I'm kind of familiar with the topic, it's like 1 hour for 1 hour. So 1 hour of lesson planning for 1 hour of class. If it's like a really unusual topic and it's a new thing that I haven't taught, and it's kind of confusing, it might take me longer than, it's more than 1-to-1. So that's some of the things that as a stages. So in the first month, that was like taking that, but now I'm like past 4 months, and I've kind of sped up my lesson planning. I do type up all my lesson planning. Occasionally I'll write it out, but I type it up so it's clean and neat, and then I print it out. Sometimes if you have a similar class again, then you can kind of use similar things. One of the things is what they call differentiation. That also is used. Basically, what that is that you want to teach learners, change your activities or how you teach slightly to adjust for the learner's skill level. So each learner might have maybe 2 students are really strong. They know the material really well, and 2 students are fairly weak. They take a little bit longer to learn the material. Then you have to kind of change your games or change the way you teach slightly to accommodate for the 2 weaker ones. That's something I'm still working on and improving on. And as I get more and more experience and build each of my skills little by little, eventually I'll be able to do it. So right now, I guess the first thing is to type up like how each of my students are, how well are they behaved, what do they respond to, do they respond well to a reward system? Some students don't respond at all to it. Some students, if you punish them, they freak out. Some students, they respond very well if you give them some kind of punishment, and some students respond really well to a reward. Like if you reward them, they just get more and more motivated to participate and produce language. And from my perspective, I think it's the most challenging part is to get, when you learn a new language, is to produce verbally, that to pronunciate words accurately and without an accent. That's probably the most challenging part. I think it's not as hard to learn to read and write, because reading and writing, you can take your time to learn it, to read and write, but to respond to someone in real time, you have to be quick enough to do it. And then also you have to say it correctly and not build bad habits. So I think that's really, really a big challenge when people learn a new language is the verbal part. Because reading, if you spend enough time on vocabulary and grammar and you do things by yourself, you can really learn something. But speaking and holding a conversation, you have to overcome a lot of the different things. Like sometimes people can't hear certain different sounds. I know that when used to work with Japanese people, their V and B sounds, they can't tell the difference between B and V, so they will confuse those sounds and they'll pronounce, I forget which one is which, but their B and V's sounds get like mixed up because I don't think in Japanese they actually differentiate the two. So certain people can't hear different sounds. So for me, I'm able to hear it. So I speak Cantonese. That was one of the languages I learned as a child growing up in the U.S. My parents taught me Cantonese, and then I learned English at school. So I think Cantonese has a lot of tones and a lot of sounds. So then you can actually hear different pitches. I think that's kind of helped me be able to notice different sounds. I didn't learn Mandarin when I was young. I kind of learned Mandarin later on, about last year of January. However, it kind of became a very quick learning process because some of the grammatical structures are similar to Cantonese. And also I can kind of hear the small intonations, the small sound differences that are used in the language. I think some people can't hear that sound, so they can't produce that sound. I also kind of think that potentially people who listen to, or play a musical instrument might have a better time hearing different sounds. When I was younger, my mom had me learn piano, so I think that also kind of helped me be able to hear and listen for different sounds better. So when I hear a different sound in another language and if I'm learning it, I can kind of hear the difference and I can mimic that sound. So I think that's sort of some things that I haven't done research on to see if there's any research being done on that to prove what I think is the reason why some people can hear it and some people can't, but that's what I think. So yeah, those are some things that speaking I find tends to be challenging for a lot of people. Reading and writing is it can like you can figure that out on your own without you can pretty much find a lot of material on your own and do it by yourself. But speaking, you need like to hold a conversation, you need another person to actually train you to converse with you. Obviously, like it's sometimes not easy to have someone consistently speak to you. So even like in a formal teaching setting, like it's like one teacher to many students. So the opportunity to speak is not as high as what is necessary to reach a very like to be able to speak in a very fluent without an accent. I make a really strong emphasis to correct accents. To create accents so that they say things correctly. So small details I would emphasize. Is it photographer? Is it photographer? Because they would read it, when they read it, they'll say photographer, but I'll say it's photographer, and they'll emphasize photographer is the incorrect way to say it. We say photographer. So little details like that, I'll emphasize it, and I'll make corrections on pronunciation, grammar right away with them so that they can they can use the correct language. I think sometimes there's so many students that it's hard for a teacher to consistently make those corrections. But when I hear it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's blaring loud sound in my ear that I have to make a correction. So I do my best to make those corrections so that they don't build these bad habits over time. All right, so that kind of concludes for today's talk. Kind of covered my three classes a couple days ago, how I progressed these last 4 months in lesson planning, and some of my thoughts on language learning. And then we will talk more about some of my other classes in another episode. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.